Many of those who feature in these pages should, and I hope that they do, contribute their own accounts about themselves and about the organisations in which they played roles, because that is not something I can do even within nearly 600 pages here, or even as a subsequent volume. So I'd like to finish off by basically saying thank you for coming here in such numbers. I know many of our friends and families are waiting across the road in the Hilton Hotel, where everyone is welcome, and where I understand the inimitable Gareth Pearce is going to say a few words. So with no further ado, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for all your assistance and your support, and let's ensure that the historiography and I suppose the more mature view of the past as the past, not as a political football, continues to develop. Thank you very much.
Rowan totally deserves that applause, and I'm sure there'll be another opportunity for more of that. One last task tonight, and it's a great pleasure for us to present a copy of Rowan's book to Niall Bergin and thank him personally for all the assistance he's given us, all the patient help and all the knowledge and support. Thank you very much. And I
don't want to say too much, I'm not on the list of speakers, but we did our best to get everyone in here this evening. I mean, there was a sort of a cut-off point of 100 people, but I think in the end we got about 140, and I think it's the last count. So I think there's only literally a handful of people across in the Hilton. So we broke the rules for a change. But thanks everyone for coming. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Enjoy that now, that's the right expression.
Firstly, I want to thank you all for attending this very special event. Tonight we are launching the first volume of a history of the Republican prisoner struggle within the English prison system. This is the first volume of the history and covers the period from 1969 to 1978. Firstly, I want to welcome the people that this book is about. The Republican men and women who were imprisoned in England, and in particular those who were there during that period from 1969 to 1978. Special Cat A, as they were known within the prison system, is about them. It's about their tenacity and determination to fight against a prison system which used them to refine its system of torture and oppression, a system that is now being used by oppressive regimes across the globe. I am particularly conscious this evening of those ex-prisoners who contributed to the book but have passed away since the project began. I want to particularly remember my friend and comrade Brian Keenan, who was very supportive of the project right up until his untimely death in 2008. It's also fitting to remember Liam Baker, Sean Campbell, John Higgins and Frankie Rafferty. All of them were contributors to the research. May they rest in peace. They are the people who withstood years of intimidation, poverty and hardship visiting jails across England, sometimes travelling long hours to a remote prison only to find that the prisoner had been ghosted to another jail the day before. Their determination not to be broken was also an important part in the overall prison struggle, and I salute them. I want to welcome all our supporters and those who have worked on behalf of prisoners. I especially want to extend my gratitude and a hearty welcome to one of the greatest human rights campaigners in the world, Solicitor Gareth Pearce. The idea for this book came about as a result of a conversation in Dominic Street 8 years ago with an ex-POW, who was that time working for Kishnan and Nearkimmy on a political education project. The conversation was about history, who should write it, and how to ensure an accurate history is set out for future generations. We were of the view that if we don't write our own history, it would be written by the enemy. That was the catalyst. However, it was Eddie O'Neill, who himself served 20 years in English prisons, who took the idea and ran with it. It was Eddie who came up with our author, Dr. Roon O'Donnell. Roon proved to be an inspired choice as a professional historian dedicated to the truth. We held many meetings, and although literally hundreds of people contributed to the book, I have to thank the committee who did such hard work. The committee were Eddie O'Neill, myself, Siobhan Maguire, Lee McCotter, Roon himself and Maureen Fanning. And tonight we are seeing all the work come to fruition. However, there were times when the book almost didn't get written. We won't forget the weekend we received a phone call saying that the Dominic Street offices of Kishna were on fire. On arriving at the building, we were not allowed in but could see the shell of the Kishna offices from the street. And some weeks previous to that, I had brought most of the files on the prisoners in England to Dominic Street for Roon to have a look at. Most of them were burned or destroyed with water. However, Eddie, Gay, Pat, Brian, Donald, and a few others climbed into the building in the middle of the night and up through what was a dangerous shell to rescue the files. Most of them were badly damaged by fire and water, but Eddie and the lads brought them to a warehouse where we then spent months with an arc light trying to dry them out and salvage what was left. And then Micheál McDowell, the then Minister for Justice, decided that he had enough of us as an ex-prisoner group and closed us down. And that was in December 2007. And that time I just lost heart. But all prisoners, or all Republicans, were used to adversity. And it was Eddie again who said we must go on, and we did. And here's the end result. As you will see from the footnotes in the book, it was a considerable project that took the committee to every corner of Ireland and parts of England. This book was a labour of love for those involved, and everyone who contributed in any way should be very, very proud. Now, my next duty is to invite the author of the book to the podium. Dr. Roon O'Donnell is a well-known academic and historian who has written extensively on Irish history, including books on Robert Emmet and the IRA campaign in the 50s. He is the head of history department in the University of Limerick and the official historian of the Robert Emmet Association. Among his many works are Robert Emmet, the O'Brien Pocket History of the Irish Famine, Ballads and Poems of the Wicklow Rebellion 1798, Marked for Botany Bay, the Wicklow United Irishmen and the Development of Political Transportation from Ireland 1791 to 1806, Operation Harvest 1956 to 62, and From Vinegar Hill to Eden Tubber. Rowan has many great works behind him, but I feel that this book has been his hardest task to date and also one of his most worthy. I don't know of any historian who has been given so much trust and access to the lives of so many people. It is not easy for Republicans to trust, but Rowan was an exception, and this is one of the greatest compliments you can pay a person, to give them your trust. This book will stand as a testament not only to the courage and determination of the prisoners involved and their families, but also the hard work and professionalism of Rowan O'Donnell. On behalf of us all, I want to thank Rowan for his hard work and patience, and it was no easy task. And it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Rowan O'Donnell to speak.
Thanks very much for that extremely kind introduction. It certainly was a privilege to be taken into the councils of people who have spent an entire generation in the course of the most concerted insurrection in the history of Western Europe, and allowed to ask difficult questions that are personal, that are sensitive, that are politically loaded, and to be entrusted with information that is basically, it was part and parcel of the Republican movement to deny access for very obvious reasons of internal security, and in the interest of prosecuting the political and the armed struggle to its logical conclusion. So I was very mindful of this, being someone who's written quite a few books. I would be certainly comparatively well versed in the history of Irish republicanism from its earliest days with the United Irishmen in 1791. And I was consciously reminded of, I suppose, the hint of pressure I put myself under to try and do justice to the material. Now, I had a few guiding concepts in my mind, and I discussed these with members of the committee. And in addition to those who were named there, I should say that people like Jimmy Ash, who I'm glad to see has been able to come over from Birmingham, Con McFadden, Liam McCotter, were very important in physically getting me around the country, because I'm awkward and I don't drive, and I've never really driven, and never driven very well, so just as well I'm off the road. Suffice it to say that my guiding sort of concept was this: to try and write as comprehensive as possible an account, bearing in mind certain inalterable facts. I was not going to be able to interview those who incarcerated Irish Republicans in Britain or anywhere else, because their being bound by the Official Secrets Acts made it completely counterproductive. It possibly would have been, in fact it would have been possible to access a small number of them, but that would not have been sufficient for the level of cross-checking and cross-referencing that I was going to require as a basic standard of evidence in what I'm attempting to present as a significant history of this particular aspect of the Troubles. So I just was not going to be able to do that. I could have got a few of them to speak off the record, but you will note there's one thing about the footnotes, which are extensive. There's not a single anonymous source in this book. Every document that has been utilised has been cited, and every direct quotation has been cited exactly to the person who told it to me. Now, all of us have our own perspectives on these things, and this is the issue. You cannot write a book dealing with more than 200 persons and many others around them who served time in England without getting a wide diversity of views. The Republican movement never was, certainly in the past, and I don't know if it ever could be, a monolith. It may be represented as a top-down, tightly structured organisation where everyone is on the same page. That has never been the case. It wasn't so in the War of Independence, or the Town War if you prefer. It wasn't so during the split into Republican Congress. It wasn't so in the divisiveness of the various 1940s campaigns. It was not the case in the 56-62 campaign, and I'm delighted to see so many veterans and friends of mine from that particular underrated effort here tonight as well. It was never so in the nature in which there was that colossal divergence between the official and provisional tendencies between December 1969 and January 1970. And even then, and I'm sure, and certainly till recent times when we can chart these things vicariously from afar, if any journalist can be believed, there's always going to be a variety of opinion about the ways forward and the methodologies most appropriate to the circumstances of the time. Now, when you're looking at a generational conflict, circa 1968 to 1998, with a significant aftershock, which indeed is ongoing, you're looking here at a shift in context that is so significant that is impossible to simplify. One cannot say that a volunteer from any one area in 1972 is the same type of person who would have been there in 1979 or 81 or 82. And in getting sort of closely to grips with one subset, an important subset on the entire Republican movement, those who campaigned in England and were captured, as opposed to those who were not captured, about whom I know nothing. And that's something that would be a very interesting book for down the line, if it is ever possible to do. But I'm not necessarily signing up for it, even if it's allowed, but that's going to be an important story. But on the basis of those who were captured and identifiable and are in a position to speak, and people were given permission as such, not that it was needed expressly, but it was understood that I could ask them questions that other journalists and historians would not normally be in a position to ask them. I can say right here and now, I was not put under any editorial guidelines. It was agreed from the start I would be able to present the story as I saw it, and that is what has happened. And in fact, I'm quite certain that many of you, when you read the book, will see things that you don't agree with. Things that you may not agree with my opinion, and you may even quibble with aspects of the fact. I expect that. That is almost, it is inevitable. If anything is inevitable, that is inevitable. There will be differences of opinions on it. But it was always like that. It was always such. And I've tried to reflect that complexity. I've tried to sort of not glide over and romanticize, dare I say, or sensationalize, or to immiserate aspects of things that are genuinely sad. I've tried to restrain that tendency because I'm trying to write a history. Now, whilst I wouldn't pretend that I'm in any way more subjective than anybody else, the standards of evidence this